Hello and welcome to the Motorboat and Yachting YouTube channel. I'm Jack Haines, the Deputy Editor and Chief Boat Tester, and with me I have Hugo, the Editor of Motorboat and Yachting, and Nick Burnham, who some of you on here may better know as Aquaholic, but Nick also contributes regularly to the magazine and our YouTube channel. How are you both doing, gentlemen?
Yeah, coping all right, thank you.
Very well. Yeah, I can't complain.
Good. Glad to hear it. Well, I think we should get straight down to it because in the August issue of the magazine, Hugo, Used Asked us, what boat between 30 and 35 feet would we pick if we were spending our own money? Why was it that you picked that particular section of the market?
Well, for me, it's the perfect place to start with a boat. It's big enough to have a family on board, to stay on reasonably comfortably, but it's also small enough to manage on your own. And crucially, I think the smaller the boat, the more fun you can actually have with it. It's more dynamic, it's more fun to drive, and probably most importantly of all, it's more affordable.
Okay, fair enough. That all makes sense. Now, Nick, I think we'll start with you. Hugo, I think people might be surprised by the boat you picked, so we maybe save that to later. But Nick, we'll start with you. If you're going out tomorrow with some money in your pocket, quite a lot of money in your pocket actually, to buy a boat between 30 and 35 feet-ish, what would you choose?
The boat I've chosen is the Jeanneau 33 Leader, and the main reason for that is everything that Hugo just said, including affordable. And I think that where Jeanneau score very strongly is they're very much a mass-produced production boat. And I run a Jeanneau myself, albeit a smaller one, so I'm well aware of the sort of strengths and weaknesses, and they are certainly not perfect. They are a mass-produced boat, and they feel like a mass-produced boat, and they're built to a price. But what that price gives you is the ability to get on the water in a boat that gives you the facilities that you need, but at a price that's not too crazy. And I think that's what Jeanneau do particularly well, and it's why they're very popular.
Okay, and if you were speccing the boat, can you talk about some of the specifics of what you choose on the particular model?
Well, I would swim very much against the tide. They do two versions. They do a sport top, which is a hard top with an opening roof and an open back and a conventional cockpit underneath. And then they do an open, which, as the name suggests, is completely open. So you have your windscreen, you have your radar arch, everything else is open. I'm a huge fan of open boats, so I would go for the open version. But when I was speaking to the dealer, he said I was probably about the only person who ever had. So, it might not be doing me any favors on resale, perhaps, but I just, in the same way that I think a hard top boat with a sunroof is a bit like a car with a sunroof compared to a convertible, and I like the full open experience. So I'd go with the open version. I'd have twin diesel engines, definitely. They do an outboard engine version as well, but I've tried both, and the outboard engine is a lot more expensive to run in the UK. It's like 3 times the cost per hour at planing speeds, and it's a bit noisier, and I don't think it suits the boat as well. So I'd have the twin diesel engines, and then a typical sort of UK spec. Now you have to dive quite deep into the options list on Jeanneau's because they come with virtually nothing. So trim tabs, VHF radio, all that kind of thing, it's all on the options list. So that kind of stuff, central heating, bow thruster maybe, and as I say, typical UK spec really.
And when you've added all of that together, what sort of price are you looking for your perfect spec Jeanneau Leader 33?
I should have checked this, shouldn't I? You might have to edit this bit. Hang on.
It's £255,000, I'll tell you.
Awesome. It's about £250,000, Jack, give or take.
Very good.
Hang on a minute there. When are you trying to make out that this was some kind of good value boat?
It's for a 35-foot boat, you've got to bear in mind. That's not too bad. How much is yours?
Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. I think when you're trying to make a case for an affordable boat and then you drop into conversation, it's a mere £250,000.
It's all relative.
People might be a little surprised at that.
Hugo, you're treading a very dangerous ground here. Do you want to tell us? Do you want to tell us what you've picked and maybe start with the price? That would be quite interesting.
Well, I mean, start with the price. Okay, it's a tiny bit more than £250,000, but we're not talking. I mean, if we're going to be really base strip simple, technically it is possible to get one for a little bit over £300,000. But the boat in question, and the boat that clearly is the correct choice at this size, is the Fairline F-Line 33.
Right. For what reason?
Well, do I even need to explain? Have you seen one?
I have seen one, but I've also seen the price I've got down here. Well, it's not all about price, I admit, but when you badger on Nick about pricing and yours costs 420 grand up to the spec that you chose, that is a lot of money for a boat that hasn't got a roof.
Makes mine sound quite affordable.
Yeah, well, I'm not. That's the difference, you see. I'm not even trying to pretend that mine is particularly affordable and somehow easily attainable. You know, the reality is I can't afford £250,000, nor can I afford £400,000. But if I were in a position to, I would do everything in my power to find that extra cash. Because when you buy a Fairline, you're not just buying a tool. You're not buying the Ford Mondeo of the boating world. You are buying a piece of floating sculpture that is also fantastically good fun to drive. It is probably the most exciting boat of that size I think I've ever driven. In fact, I've driven faster boats, I've driven crazier boats, but what is so fantastic about that F-Line 33 is it's accessible, it's fun, it's fast, it's a fantastic hull, it rides brilliantly, it corners absolutely brilliantly, but you can also use it as an everyday boat. It's still, 33 foot long, you've got a lovely open cockpit, you've got some simply gorgeous details. I think styling wise, it is the prettiest boat by a country mile, not just of your or our three boats, but of the entire market. For me, that is the absolute sweet spot. It's gorgeous, beautifully designed, Alberto Mancini lines, really usable cockpit, and you have got sleeping space down below. You've got one really good mid cabin. Okay, it's not huge, but it's a decent sized bed. You can happily sleep two people in there. And then you've got a convertible dinette that makes up for another two. So you can get your family of four on board, or you can go out on your own, have fun, and absolutely love every single minute of it. It is clearly the correct choice.
A very strong case. But if it was my money, I would be buying a boat that I could use every day, summer or winter. And that's where my choice comes in. The Marex 310. Now, in terms of price, it's closer to the Geno than you might think, actually. It's only £20,000 more up to spec. And if you choose the D4 engine as opposed to D6-380 that I choose, you cut back 20 grand and the price is level pegging. It's obviously far cheaper than the Fairline in terms of quality, the way it's put together, the design, the thoughtfulness that has gone into that boat. It's streets ahead. It's typically Scandinavian. It's so clever. There isn't an inch of space that isn't used wisely, and because of that you can use it all year round. I mean, what the hell are you going to do when it starts raining on the F33 and Nick on your Leader 33 without a roof, for that fact? I mean, you're going back in time on that boat. Having canopy covers, I mean, that just isn't a factor anymore unless you like thumb surgery. So I slightly discount that because I think you might be the only person who would pick that boat like that, but fair enough. Whereas with the Marex, you've got two sunroofs. You've got that fantastic canopy system that, like curtains, comes out of the mouldings, completely encloses the aft section of the boat in seconds. No thumb breaking there. And then you have a boat that you can use all year round. And what it has up its sleeve is it's really good fun to drive, which you might not expect. It's practical and it's well made. But when you get behind the helm, it's an absolute riot. The handling, okay, it may not be running around circles around the F33, but it would run it close for its money.
Wouldn't you get close to the F33? Wouldn't you be able to stay with it?
Not performance-wise, I mean. Yes, it only has one engine, but that's...
So what are you going to do when that one stops
that's
working?
one less engine to service. It's one less stern drive to service. It's fuel efficient. It's doing, at cruising speed, 1.9 litres per mile. The Fairline's doing 3.2 litres per mile because it's got a ridiculous pair of 430 horsepower Volvo Penta petrols, and then you've got the
What's ridiculous about that? They're two quality V8 engines making a noise to summon the gods. It's clearly the engine of choice.
Who travels at 50 knots ever?
How does it cost to
travel at 50 knots, but I can still travel at 20 knots if I want to. The point is, I can have a hilarious amount of fun doing 47 knots for those few minutes when I choose to. And can I also pick you up on this idea of boating in the rain? Whoever wants to go boating in the rain?
No one wants to, but it happens. As we all know, we all go boating in the UK. You are going to get rained on at some point. And how nice just to be able to go like that and shut a sunroof rather than, oh, I've got to put up canopies. I've got to unfold this. I've got to zip that. I've got to pop of that. You're just going to give up. Everyone's going to be crying.
Just put on your wet weather gear, get a little damp and move on.
Oh, that's going to look good. I'm sure Alberto Mancini, when he pictured drawing the F33, had people in Fowlies and big bright yellow.
Well, I'm not suggesting you look at the weather forecast and go, great, it's pissing with rain this afternoon. Let's go out and have a blast in my open boat. You wait for a sunny day and you go boating when you actually want to go boating.
No, that's the point I'm trying to make. You don't have to do that with the Max. You can go out if it's a bit chilly. Just turn the
And you'll
heater on.
still get wet and cold. And you'll look outside and go, well, I'm glad I came out here today. It's pissing with rain and it's freezing cold. What a perfect idea to go boating. It's nonsense. People go boating when it's sunny and lovely and you want to have fun. Nick, will you back me up on this with your open boat?
Yeah, you're going to have to, Nick.
I think that I think to be a boater, you have to be an optimist. And I think if you are setting your stall out to concern yourself with what happens when it's cold and grey and raining, you probably don't want to be buying a boat in the first place. Maybe you should buy a caravan.
Oh, are you suggesting the Marix looks a little bit like a caravan, Nick?
I wouldn't go that far, but I think the Jeannot splits them nicely in the middle to being a nice open fun boat without having to be indoors all the time, but still retain a bit of practicality and indeed the ability to sit inside, which I noticed the Marix rather lacks.
Well, you can sit on the bed.
You can sit on the bed.
But no, the whole
spend £250,000 and sit on the bed. You're quite right.
Just remind me what engines you've got in your Jeannot, Nick.
Nice little economical D3s, lovely motors.
Are those by any chance the rather feeble little car engines from a certain Volvo SUV?
I don't think they are anymore. I think they've changed them.
Really?
Yeah, I think the new D3 is a very different beast.
Is that not still a 5-cylinder car engine at heart?
It's a fine motor. Very well proven.
Yes.
Very well proven, very economical. Remind me how much it's going to cost to fill your boat up after your afternoon's fun?
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to check. 680 litres or so, but, you know, petrol is very cheap at the moment. So,
yeah, so a grand.
Probably about £1,000.
Yeah.
But, you know, you get your £1,000 worth of fun out of that, every penny of it.
I think clearly a magazine editor's budget is very different to mine.
Hugo, can you just remind me which engines you'd have in the F-33 if you were to choose the diesel option?
Well, clearly you wouldn't go anywhere near the diesel option. That
well,
would be
just you know, I think people would be interested to know exactly which engines. If you want to get the price anywhere near the other boats, and you have to go for the lowly diesel engines, which ones would they be?
I have a feeling that they might be some 5-cylinder diesel engines of some kind.
So the exact same ones that would be in Nick's Leader.
Well, technically, if you were to order them, but I'm pretty sure they're only really on the price list to make a point. I can't imagine anybody is going to do that. I mean, why on earth would you buy a Ferrari and then stick an engine from a sort of Ford Transit in it? It's just not going to happen.
The price list for realists.
Yeah, I mean, Fairline must think someone's going to, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, they're for realists.
Well, I suppose that might be.
I'll tell you what the diesel engine is for. The petrol engine is for the guy who wants to go out having a fantastic day on his boat, and the diesel engine is for the guy who wants to go out boating the rest of the year as well.
You know, you don't buy a boat as a tool. You buy it as a toy. You know, you want to have fun on it. You want to be proud of it. Every time you go down to that marina, you want to think, what a gorgeous piece of kit I've got myself there. And I just can't really see that happening with the Jeannot or the Marix. They're very nice boats. I'd be very proud. I'd be delighted to go out on one. I'd be delighted to own one. But it's not going to really make me leap out of bed in the morning and go, I've got to just go down and see that boat. Even if I don't even go out on it. I probably can't even afford to go out on it. I'm just going to look at it and enjoy it. You don't get that kind of pleasure from either of your two choices.
If that's your idea of boating, then I think you picked the perfect boat, but I'll stick with mine.
Talking of using the boat in the marina, Hugo, can you tell me how you're going to bring that thing into a berth on your own with nowhere to hang the fenders and a foredeck with no railings on it?
Well, yeah, clearly you just drive it into the marina so beautifully, nudge it alongside, all the time in the world to step off the back. Might obviously have to fold down your evolving bathing platform in order to be able to step off, or use one of the beautiful pantograph side doors to step out on the side deck. But I don't think berthing is going to be the biggest problem with that. And see that you might not want to run up to the foredeck in a kind of, you know, force 8 beam sea. But then my point about the whole thing not going out in conditions like that, you know, why do you want to go boating when it's rough and horrible and wet? You just don't. So you say that.
No one's, you know, I don't think anyone's saying you go out on that on purpose, but you as someone who's been boating for a long time know that you can get caught out. And I know which boat I'd rather be caught out in of these three if it does kick up.
Yeah, but if it kicks up, I mean, you can be home in about 3.5 minutes at 50 knots. You're only capable of doing 20 or 25 or what no, the Marix is reasonably swift.
At 35, excuse me. It'll clip along nicely at 35 knots.
Yeah, you'll probably get home. You won't get too wet. You know, I'll obviously be enjoying a beer by that point, but you know, you'll be in soon after.
You won't. You'll be at the petrol station. Yeah, you'll be at the fuel berth. You'll be at the fuel berth crying, is what you'll be doing.
If you had the £400,000 in your bank account and you had to spend it on a boat, would you still be buying that Jano?
If I had £400,000 to spend on a boat, then I'd be buying the Jano and have enough money left to run it. See, the thing with people, the thing about people who have £400,000 to spend on a boat is that generally they've acquired that £400,000 by being very careful and not spending £1,000 a day on petrol.
Up until the point when you can afford it, at which point you make the very most of it.
I think the point you made earlier that, you know, if you've got £400,000 to spend on a 33-footer, then you are going to view it as a bit of a toy. Whereas if your 33-footer is more in line with the price of Nick and my choice, it's not going to be a toy. It is going to be your absolute pride and joy. It's going to have your undivided attention. Any spare cash is probably going to be going that way, and you're going to want to use it through thick and thin. Even if it's looking a bit dodgy, you're going to go, I want to get my money's worth out of this thing. And I'm going to go out if it's not absolutely sparkling. And I think the Marix allows you to do that. You won't rue the days when it's a bit cloudy and a bit grizzly. And you may mock people don't want to go boating in that. But I think if you've spent the money, you do want to go boating. Even if it's not absolutely horrendous weather, you want to get out on the water. And the Marix allows you to do that any time of year, as long as it's not absolutely dreadful.
The one thing that I like less about the Fairline is the sort of what I would call the bus seating. You can face forward or you can face backward, and that's it. You don't have a nice sort of sweep of seating around. You've just got this kind of forward or backward seating, and I think that's a shame. I think it's a missed opportunity with that boat. And they could change that very easily. They could put seating along and down the side. But, you know, even just to the point of, you know, where you want to sit and as I like to say, relax with a good book, there's no way you can sit on that boat on the seat and face across the seat and have a backrest like you would have on a corner, like on the Jano. On the Jano, you've got, you know, adaptable seating, you've got bits that lift up and down. And let's face it, actually, when you do your boating and you go out for a day on the boat, and, you know, as a boat tester, you tend to really focus on what's it like to drive, what's it like going along. 90% of the time, you're at anchor somewhere, enjoying swimming off the boat and relaxing and having a picnic and everything else. And actually what you want is a big floating deck chair, and that's how most boats get used. And I think the seating and the way that it folds around the whole cockpit on that Jano, I think that works extremely well for that.
Nick, you've just described the Marix.
I haven't because you're indoors on the Marix. You've got your sunroof to look out of, but you're indoors.
No, you're not indoors. You fold those roofs back. You've got a little strip of radar arch, but you're pretty much fully exposed. It is about life on deck, that boat. And I don't think that many people sit downstairs on boats of that size, only if it's absolutely hammering down, maybe at night before you go to bed. But most of the time, you're on a boat because you want to be up on deck. It is about being out on the water, being on deck and enjoying your surroundings. And downstairs, you've got a couple of perfectly comfortable cabins and a nice bathroom. But for me, the point of being on a boat is being on deck. And I think that's where the Marix really wins out. And another thing I like about it is, you say about the Jano being mass produced. Well, I said this in the written article. I think you risk, you know, there's a lack of exclusivity with something like that. The Fairline, okay, is maybe at the opposite end of the scale, but then you might get a bit too much attention for your liking. You're certainly going to be turning heads as you go into every marina on that boat, into every bay. That'll suit some people. It won't suit others. They don't want to be gawped at when they're out on the water. I think the Marix treads that line really carefully. It's not built in enormous numbers. It's going to feel quite exclusive, but it still certainly looks and feels. I think it feels the most special of them all.
The nicest thing in the world when you're on a boat is to have a fantastic day out, up on deck, in the sunshine, brilliant, and then you have a meal in the evening, and you're sat in the back of the boat, and the sun goes down, and you get a little bit of chill starting up, and you've got your central heating on, and you go down into the cabin, and you snuggle up in that lovely cozy cabin, have a drink down there, sit around, have a little chat before bed. Fantastic.
I can see that, and I must admit the one thing I slightly regret about that Fairline is that there aren't any windows in that cabin down below.
Yeah, that's a weird thing, isn't it?
Well, it's a bit of a cheat because it looks like it's got them from the outside. It's a clever piece of design. It looks like it's got these little strips of glass down the side, and in fact, it's just a recessed black painted panel that I think is designed to look like a window from the outside, but on the inside, instead of windows, what they have got, which is quite neat but not quite the same, is they've got a little TV screen linked to a camera on the foredeck that projects an image of the view in front of you. But I'm with you that it would be nice to actually have some proper glass in those hull sides so that you could see your surroundings.
Maybe we should turn away from our primary choices and discuss if there are any other boats that we had in the running. There's this huge selection, and because it's not a particular style of boat, it's a size. There are a lot of options in this sort of 30 to 35 foot range. So, Hugo, aside from the F33, was there anything else that caught your eye if you had some money to splash on a boat of this size?
Well, I guess on a similar theme, I'm a big fan of Windies, and I do love the Windies Onda. So I would certainly be tempted on that front. There's nothing really around that kind of 35 foot size though. You're either at the Chimera, or I think they now do a Grand Zonda 32, which is sort of just a slightly stretched glorified Zonda. I think if there were, well, there is now the 37 Shamal coming along. Don't know, that's probably a little bit too big and a little bit too expensive, but something in that sort of size would be lovely. There's obviously the Axopar range, terrific value for money, but again, there's sort of nothing quite at the right size. You've either got the 37 or the 28. So yeah, I'm not sure. Those would be the other two obvious turn to brands. What about you? Have you got other things you were considering?
Yes, well, obviously sorely tempted by the Swift Trawler 35. Some may say a vested interest. They don't know. My parents have one of those boats, so I have a good experience of it. But it still stands up that it really is one of the best package boats of that size range. It's slightly over 35 feet, but being a Beneteau Group product, it's pretty good value. And they've just packed so much into that shell. It's really capable for its size. And we talk about staying on board. Well, you could comfortably, as a couple, do weeks on end on that boat. I mean, there's so much space on board for its size. But the reason it lost out to the Marex is if it was my money, I would want something that's a little bit more engaging to drive, and the Marex really is fantastic fun from behind the wheel. The Beneteau is very sturdy, semi-displacement hull, and very solid, and would sort of get through anything, but it's not that engaging to drive, whereas the Marex is genuinely good fun, and that is something that would matter to me if it was my own money. How about you, Nick? Any alternatives to your Jeannot?
Bavaria put a very nice boat together. And the interior of the Bavaria, I actually think in many respects, in terms of the fit and finish, is probably a little bit above the Jeannot. But the Jeannot, I think, has a very good hull. So on balance, I would probably go with the Jeannot over the Bavaria. I'd be very tempted, since we're living in a fantasy world, as clearly we are, because Hugo has picked an F-Line 33 with V8 petrol engines in. So I think if we're living in a fantasy world, I'd be really tempted to go for a classic 90s 35 footer, something like Princess 366 Riviera. Again, amazing. Look at the space you get in that. There you've got your two big proper cabins and a decent saloon and a decent cockpit. They're getting on a bit now, but they're not dear. And if you revamp one of those, that'd be a really interesting 35, 36 foot boat.
Would you actually choose that over a modern 35 footer?
Probably not, because they don't exist, so you'd have to put your own money into it. And by the time you spent 100 grand on a pair of D4s, you start off with a 50 grand boat, you put 100 grand into a pair of D4s. If we did anything else, so you're now up to 150, and what you've ended up with is a 60 grand boat. So, that's the problem. You almost kind of want to find somebody else who's been mad enough to do it and then had to sell it, and then it would be worth it. But that's where it all falls down, is the engines. And you see it sometimes, these beautiful boats. People are doing it a lot now with Sunseekers as well, because they're not building stuff like the old Hawks and sort of Thunderhawks and Superhawks and so on. People, and you've seen this, people are restoring them and bringing those boats back. But of course, always the weak point, I think, is the engines. They've always got the original 90s engines. You're always thinking, well, it's only a matter of time.
Something like a Superhawk 34, or even the original Targa 34, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are both really sweet looking boats, really good hulls, just enough space in them to get away with it for certainly a weekend, maybe a week. It could be tempting.
Do you know what? Portofino 31. Imagine a Portofino 31 with a pair of D4s on it. You've got those classic angular 80s lines like a Lotus Esprit. Really fantastic cockpit. You've got a decent cabin in there. Twin D4s to give it the performance that it should have had, because it had twin 200s with diesels originally, and it still did over 30 knots. So now that'll push up towards 40 knots. A great hull, Don Shed designed hull. That's the boat.
We're getting slightly waylaid, but I think we may have unearthed another video topic here, because I think we could make Hugo, you could give us a nominal budget to go and spend in the classifieds, and we could come back with what we find and argue about that maybe in another video. But I think we'll draw this discussion to a close. Thank you both very much for your input. And if you disagree with these choices, which I'm sure you will, and you'll tell us about anyway, please do in the comments below. Let us know what you'd pick and why, and we'll be sure to have a look. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you again very soon.